The vast emptiness of space surrounding the Xylos nebula shimmered with the imposing presence of the Cthar Empire's patrol fleet. The nebula's gases twisted in cosmic patterns of purple and blue, casting an ethereal glow upon the sleek, predatory hulls of the Cthar vessels. Commander Forlag stood on the command bridge of the flagship Dominance, his scaled skin reflecting the ambient light as he gazed at the tactical display with four piercing yellow eyes. The Cthar Empire had ruled this sector for generations, their technological superiority and rigid military doctrine crushing any resistance they encountered. Their ships were marvels of engineering, angular, efficient, and designed to project power through their very silhouette. The doctrine of overwhelming force was ingrained in every Cthar officer from their earliest training days. Status report. Forlag commanded, his deep voice resonating through the bridge. His second-in-command, Officer Krell, stepped forward with practiced precision. All systems nominal, Commander. The fleet maintains standard patrol formation. Long-range sensors show nothing of consequence in this quadrant, as expected. Forlag nodded with satisfaction. The Xylos Nebula region was largely considered devoid of significant intelligent life. A few primitive species inhabited some of the outer worlds, but none had achieved spaceflight, let alone posed any challenge to Cthar dominance. This patrol was routine, a show of force in an already subjugated region. Commander, the sudden urgency in the sensor officer's voice cut through the quiet hum of the bridge. Long-range sensors are detecting an anomaly. Forlag turned, his posture straightening. Explain. A single object approaching at high velocity. Configuration unknown. It matches known designs in our galactic database. The bridge fell silent. Unknown vessels were rare in Cthar space. Most civilizations advanced enough for interstellar travel were well documented in their extensive records. Magnify and enhance, Forlag ordered, moving toward the main view screen. The image sharpened to reveal a vessel unlike any in Cthar experience. It lacked the biomechanical influences of the Vekinar, the crystalline structures of the Luminoth, or the chaotic asymmetry of the Drift Nomads. Instead, it displayed a strange elegance, curved in places where Cthar ships were angular, compact where Cthar vessels were expansive, with peculiar energy signatures emanating from what appeared to be its propulsion system. Attempt standard identification protocol, Forlag commanded, his eyes narrowing. Send the Imperial recognition signal. The communications officer complied immediately, transmitting the standard Cthar hailing frequencies. Moments passed with no response. They must be malfunctioning or deliberately ignoring us, Krell suggested, mandibles clicking in irritation. Continue transmission. Add warning protocols, Forlag ordered. Inform them they have entered sovereign Cthar space and must identify themselves immediately. More moments passed. The unknown vessel continued its approach, neither accelerating nor changing course, seemingly undeterred by the presence of a superior Cthar force. Commander, their energy output is unusual, the science officer reported. I'm detecting power signatures that don't conform to any known propulsion theory in our database. Their efficiency ratings would be impossible by our standards. Forlag felt a sensation rarely experienced in his long military career, unease. Bring the fleet to alert status. Prepare defensive systems, but do not target unless I command it. The bridge erupted into controlled activity as officers relayed orders throughout the fleet. Weapon systems hummed to life, shields strengthened, and fighter craft prepared for potential deployment. Commander, we're receiving a transmission, the communications officer exclaimed. It's in perfect Cthar language, but the intonation patterns are unlike anything I've ever heard. On screen, Forlag commanded. The message was text only, appearing in the central display. This is Earth Defense Vessel Vigilance. This region is under the protection of the Human Alliance. Alter your course immediately. The bridge fell into stunned silence. Humans. The word resonated in Forlag's mind like an ancient echo. Humans were creatures of myth, mentioned in obscure historical records from the early expansion era, thousands of cycles ago. Most Cthar scholars considered them either legendary or extinct. This must be some form of deception, Krell said, breaking the silence. Perhaps a new faction using ancient terminology to create confusion. Forlag studied the message and the vessel's configuration. Run a comprehensive deep scan. I want to know exactly what we're facing. Minutes passed as the science team worked frantically, pushing their advanced sensors to maximum capacity. Commander, initial. Results are troubling, the science officer finally reported. The vessel's whole composition includes elements unknown to our metallurgical database. Its energy shielding appears to operate on principles we cannot fully analyze with our current technology. And there are life signs aboard, but they're unusual. Explain unusual, Forlag demanded. They match no known species profile, Commander. Bipedal, endothermic, carbon-based, but with unique biological signatures. They could potentially be consistent with ancient descriptions of humans, though those records are fragmentary at best. Forlag's inner eyelids flickered, a sign of deep thought among his species. The situation defied conventional tactical assessment. A single vessel of unknown origin, claiming to represent a potentially mythical species, confronting an entire Cthar battle fleet. This is absurd, he finally declared. Whether this is some elaborate ruse or a lost colony of delusional primitives, they will learn the consequences of challenging the Cthar Empire. Deploy Fighter Squadron Talon. Demonstrate our power, but capture the vessel if possible. I want answers. Within moments, 12 sleek Cthar fighters launched from the fleet's carriers. Their needle-like forms accelerated rapidly toward the intruder, weapons primed, but not yet firing, a show of force designed to intimidate. As the fighters approached the unknown vessel, something unprecedented occurred. The vessel, the self-proclaimed Vigilance, moved, but not in any conventional manner. It seemed to shift position instantaneously, as though the laws of inertia had been temporarily suspended. One moment, it was directly in the fighter's path. The next, it had repositioned itself at a perfect right angle to their approach vector. Impossible, the tactical officer whispered. No vessel can maneuver like that without killing its crew. Talon leader to command, came the voice of the fighter squadron commander. Target has performed some kind of short-range teleportation or space-folding maneuver, attempting to reacquire. The fighters regrouped and executed a pincer movement, a standard Cthar tactic designed to leave no escape route. Again, the Vigilance moved with that same impossible fluidity, this time positioning itself behind the fighter squadron. They're toying with us, Krell growled. Talon squadron, weapons free, Forlag commanded. Disable if possible, but establish dominance. The fighters opened fire, their energy weapons lancing through space toward the Vigilance. What happened next sent shockwaves through the Cthar command structure. Not a single shot connected. The Vigilance moved through space like water, flowing around the energy beams as if they were moving in slow motion. Then it responded. Pinpoints of blue-white light emerged from previously invisible ports on the Vigilance's hull. Not focused energy weapons like the Cthar used, but something different. The lights pulsed once, and precision energy fields enveloped each Cthar fighter individually. There were no explosions, no destruction. Something far more humiliating occurred. Each fighter's propulsion and weapons systems simply shut down, leaving them drifting helplessly in space. What just happened? Forlag demanded, his voice barely controlled. Electromagnetic pulse technology of some kind, the science officer responded, frantically analyzing incoming data, but targeted with a precision we've never seen before. They've disabled every fighter without destroying any of them. All pilots report systems failure, but life support remains functional. Before Forlag could issue new orders, the communications officer interrupted. Commander, we're receiving a direct transmission. Visual this time. On screen, Forlag ordered, squaring his shoulders. The view screen activated to reveal a face that sent another shock wave through the bridge. The being was undeniably alien to Cthar eyes, yet disturbingly familiar from ancient historical records. Hairless except for the top of the head, with soft features, rounded eyes, and pinkish-tan skin. A human. Commander Forlag of the Cathar Empire. The human spoke in flawless Cathar language, though the mouth movements seemed incongruous with the sounds. I am Captain Eva Rostova of the Earth Defense Force. What you just witnessed was merely a demonstration. Your fighters are unharmed, and their systems will reactivate in approximately 20 minutes. Forlag stared at the alien face, struggling to maintain his composure. You commit an act of war against the Cathar Empire and expect us to simply accept it? Your single vessel, impressive as it may be, cannot stand against our entire fleet. Captain Rostova's expression remained unervingly calm. Let me be clear, Commander. Humanity has been observing the Cathar Empire for centuries. Your expansion has now violated the protective boundaries we established around this region. The vessel you see is but one of many at our disposal, though typically we prefer to remain unseen. If you've been observing us for so long, Forlag challenged, why reveal yourselves now? Because you are on the verge of invading a star system containing the pre-FDL Lemurian species in the Xylos Nebula. This would constitute a genocide under our Galactic Preservation Directive. We cannot allow it. Forlag felt his blood run cold. The planned expansion into the Xylos Nebula was classified information, known only to the highest echelons of the Imperial command structure. How could these humans know? You speak of boundaries, yet the Cathar Empire acknowledges no authority but its own, Forlag responded, buying time to consider his options. Why should we recognize your claims? Because you've now seen what a single human vessel can do, Rostova replied simply. I suggest you withdraw your fleet immediately and prepare for diplomatic contact. The era of unchecked Cathar expansion is over, Commander. How painful that reality becomes depends entirely on your actions now. Forlag's mind raced through tactical options. The fleet's main cannons could potentially overwhelm even this advanced vessel. But if there were others, if the humans truly had been observing unseen for centuries. I require time to consult with Imperial Command, he finally said. You have 1 hour, Rostova replied before terminating the transmission. The bridge erupted into urgent discussions as Forlag moved to his private communications chamber. This encounter would change everything, regardless of the outcome. The very foundations of Cathar's strategic doctrine, built on their perceived technological superiority, had been shaken. An hour later, Forlag had received his orders. The Supreme Command was equally shocked but pragmatic. Direct confrontation was deemed too risky without further intelligence. He was to negotiate a temporary withdrawal and gather as much information as possible about these humans. Captain Rostova, Forlag began once communications were reestablished. I propose a direct meeting to discuss the situation. Neutral ground, limited personnel. Would you agree to such terms? Rostova considered this for a moment. There is a space station at the edge of this system. It's automated and uninhabited, originally built by the Antrian traders before they abandoned this region. We can meet there in 6 hours. Agreed, Forlag said, concealing his surprise at her knowledge of even this obscure facility. As preparations began for the meeting, Officer Krell approached Forlag privately. Commander, this is clearly a trap. One vessel, no matter how advanced, cannot stand against us. We should bring our full force to bear and crush this presumptuous species. Forlag turned to his second-in-command. And if there are more vessels? If they have been watching us undetected for centuries, as they claim? No, Krell. We will follow Supreme Command's orders. We will gather intelligence, assess their true capabilities, and then decide how to proceed. 6 hours later, Forlag's shuttle approached the abandoned trading station. It was a circular structure with extending docking arms, its once bright exterior now dulled by years of cosmic radiation. A sleek shuttle from the Vigilance had already docked on the opposite side. Forlag brought 3 officers with him. Krell is his second-in-command, Scientist Officer Mevel, to analyze human technology, and Diplomat Officer Shun, one of the few Cathar with experience in first contact protocols from the early Empire days. They entered the station's central chamber, a hexagonal room with viewing ports overlooking the distant nebula. Captain Rostova awaited them with 3 human officers. The contrast was immediate and striking. Where the Kthar wore ornate battle armor with rank insignias prominently displayed, the humans wore simple, form-fitting uniforms in deep blue with minimal markings. Where the Kthar stood rigid and formal, the humans appeared relaxed yet alert. Most disconcerting to Forlag was their size. They were smaller than Kthar warriors, with no visible natural weapons, yet they showed not the slightest sign of intimidation. Commander Forlag, Rostova stepped forward, inclining her head slightly. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting." Forlag returned the gesture stiffly. "Your demonstration left little choice, Captain." "Then let me introduce my team," she continued, gesturing to a dark-skinned male. "Commander Marcus Wilson, my executive officer." She indicated a shorter female with facial features suggesting different genetic heritage than Rostova's. "Lieutenant Yuna Tanaka, our xenobiologist." Finally, she turned to an older male with silver hair. "And Dr. Philip Reyes, our diplomatic liaison." Forlag introduced his team with similar brevity. Tension filled the air as both parties took positions on opposite sides of the room's central table. "Let's address the immediate concern," Rostova began. "Your fleet must withdraw from this region. The Lemurian civilization may be aquatic and pre-space flight, but they have a rich culture and advanced mathematics. Your planned colony would devastate their oceanic environment." "You speak with remarkable certainty about our intentions," Forlag countered. "And you claim to represent a species that most Kthar scholars consider mythological. I think we deserve some explanation before discussing territorial concessions." Captain Rostova exchanged glances with Dr. Reyes, who nodded slightly. She tapped a small device on her wrist, and a holographic display appeared above the table. "Humanity is not a new species, Commander Forlag," she said as the hologram displayed a star map of the galaxy. "We are one of the oldest. Over 10,000 years ago, when your species was still developing writing, we had already colonized hundreds of worlds." The display shifted to show ancient spacecraft, surprisingly primitive compared to the Vigilance, yet clearly capable of interstellar travel. "Then we encountered the Harvesters." The hologram showed terrifying biomechanical entities that caused even the stoic Kthar officers to tense. A species that consumed all in their path. The war lasted centuries and nearly destroyed us. When we finally defeated them, humanity made a choice. The hologram shifted again, showing human vessels disappearing from known space. "We withdrew from the galactic stage. We concealed our worlds with technology beyond anything known at the time. We watched as new species arose, formed empires, went to war, made peace. We developed technologies that allowed us to observe without being observed. And we established the Preservation Directive, a mandate to protect developing species from extinction or subjugation." "You expect us to believe you've been hiding for millennia?" Krell interjected skeptically. "That you possess technology so advanced you can simply disappear? Whether you believe it doesn't change reality, Officer Krell," Rostova replied calmly. "Consider the Vigilance's capabilities you witnessed today. That vessel is actually several generations behind our current technology. It was specifically chosen for this contact because we didn't want to overwhelm you." The implications sent a chill through Forlag's spine. If she was telling the truth, prove it, he challenged. "Show us evidence of this hidden human civilization." Rostova smiled slightly. "Very well." She manipulated her wrist device again. This time, the hologram showed detailed surveillance imagery of the Kthar homeworld, their military installations, even classified shipyards deep within their territory. Then it displayed images of the Supreme Command during a recent strategic meeting, a meeting Forlag himself had attended. "This is from 3 days ago," Rostova said quietly. "We have similar archives for every spacefaring civilization in the galaxy. We've been watching, Commander. Always watching." The Kthar officers stared in stunned silence. Such comprehensive surveillance should have been impossible given their defensive systems. "Why reveal yourselves now?" Forlag finally asked, echoing his earlier question. Why not remain hidden? Because the galaxy is changing, Dr. Reyes spoke for the first time, his voice carrying the weight of authority. The balance of power has shifted too far. The Cthar Empire's expansionist policies have accelerated beyond sustainable levels. Your planned assimilation of 15 new systems in the next cycle would cause the extinction of not just the Lemurians, but 3 other promising species. We cannot allow that. So you appoint yourselves the guardians of the galaxy? Diplomat Officer Shin asked, his tone neutral but probing. Someone must, Lieutenant Tanaka responded. The strong have always preyed upon the weak. It is the natural order, but extinction is permanent. Once a species is gone, their unique perspective is lost forever. The galaxy becomes less for their absence. Forlag was about to respond when a deafening alarm blared through the station. The lights flickered and emergency systems activated. What treachery is this? Krell demanded, reaching for his weapon. Not ours, Commander Wilson said, studying a device similar to Rostova's. His expression darkened. Multiple vessels have just appeared in system. They don't match any known configuration in our database. The station shuddered as something impacted its outer hull. We need to get back to our ships, Rostova said urgently. This station is not designed for defense. As if in response to her words, a section of the ceiling collapsed, forcing both parties to dive for cover. Through the breach, a nightmarish sight appeared, a boarding craft of organic design, pulsing with sickly green light. The craft's hull split open like a blooming flower, revealing figures that were neither fully organic nor mechanical. Void Reavers. Scientist Officer Mevel whispered in horror. I thought they were extinct. The creatures surged forward, humanoid in basic shape, but with limbs that twisted and reconfigured like living metal, faces covered in breathing apparatus that resembled insectoid mandibles. They moved with unnatural speed and precision. Both human and Cthar officers drew weapons simultaneously. The humans' weapons fired pulses of concentrated energy that seemed to pass through the Reaver's armor at specific points, while the Cthar's more conventional energy weapons required sustained fire to penetrate their defenses. We need to reach our shuttles, Forlag shouted over the chaos. The docking bay's been compromised, Wilson called back, checking his device while firing with his other hand. They've cut us off. There's a maintenance tunnel that connects both docking arms, Rostova said, dropping 2 Reavers with precision shots. We can reach it through the station's core. Forlag made an instant decision. Lead the way, Captain. We'll cover your rear. The mixed group fought their way through the station's corridors, Void Reavers pursuing relentlessly. The humans in Cthar found themselves adapting to each other's tactics with surprising speed, the humans' precision complementing the Cthar's power. What are these creatures? Forlag asked as they momentarily took shelter in a sealed chamber. Space scavengers, Dr. Reyes explained while Lieutenant Tanaka treated a wound on Diplomat Officer Shin's arm. They appeared during times of conflict, feeding on the remnants of battles. But I've never seen them attack with such coordination before. They are evolving, Scientist Officer Mevel suggested. These implants, he gestured to a fallen Reaver's body they dragged inside. They're like nothing in our records. This is technology grafted to biology in ways that should be impossible. Commander, the Vigilance is reporting that the Void Reavers have launched a full-scale attack on your fleet, Commander Wilson reported, his face grim. They've already disabled 2 of your support vessels. Forlag activated his own communication device. Dominance reports status. The response came through filled with static. Under heavy assault, Commander. Their weapons. They're bypassing our shields somehow. We've lost the Resolute and Implacable. The rest are forming defensive formation, but these things are everywhere. Forlag looked at Rostova, a moment of unspoken communication passing between them. Your vessel, he said. Can it make a difference? Yes, she replied without hesitation. But I need to be aboard to coordinate properly. Then that's our priority, Forlag decided. Get Captain Rostova back to the Vigilance. Without it, none of us will survive this encounter. The group fought their way through the maintenance tunnels, facing Void Reavers at every turn. The confined spaces actually worked to their advantage, limiting the enemy's numerical superiority. When they finally reached the human shuttle's docking port, they found it surrounded by Reavers attempting to breach its hull. "We need a diversion," Rostova stated, analyzing the situation. "We'll provide it," Forlag said, checking his weapons charge. "Get to your ship, Captain. Save what you can of both our forces." Rostova looked at him with newfound respect. "Commander Wilson will remain with you to ensure you reach your shuttle as well. The Cathar Empire and humanity have much to discuss after this is over." The Cathar officers unleashed a barrage of covering fire, drawing the Reaver's attention while Rostova and her remaining officers made a dash for their shuttle. Moments later, the sleek craft detached from the station and accelerated toward the Vigilance. Through the station's viewport, Forlag witnessed the battle raging around them. The Cathar fleet, once proud and unstoppable, was scattered and on the defensive. Nearly a dozen Void Reaver vessels, each resembling a massive skeletal hand, had surrounded them, launching waves of smaller craft and firing weapons that seemed to phase through Cathar shields. Then the Vigilance entered the fray. It moved unlike any vessel Forlag had ever seen, executing maneuvers that defied physics as he understood them. Energy cascaded from its hull in controlled waves, disrupting the Void Reaver's weapons. Where it focused its attention, Reaver vessels faltered. "Dominance, this is Commander Forlag. Coordinate all remaining vessels to support the human ship Vigilance. Follow its lead and target what it targets." There was a moment of hesitation before his fleet acknowledged the unprecedented order to follow an alien vessel's tactical lead. But as the battle progressed, the wisdom of the command became apparent. The Vigilance carved paths through the Reaver forces that the Cathar vessels could exploit, and when Cathar ships came under heavy attack, the Vigilance would appear to draw enemy fire. It took nearly an hour for Forlag and the others to fight their way to the Cathar shuttle and return to the Dominance. By then, the tide of battle had turned. 3 Reaver vessels had been destroyed, and the others were beginning to retreat. On the bridge of the Dominance, Forlag watched with a mixture of humility and fascination as the Vigilance continued to pursue the fleeing Reavers, preventing their escape with precision attacks to their propulsion systems. "Commander," the communications officer called, "we're receiving a transmission from Captain Rostova." On screen, Forlag ordered. Rostova appeared, her uniform now bearing evidence of the recent battle. "Commander Forlag, the immediate threat has been neutralized. However, our analysis suggests these Void Reavers were merely an advance force. Their main fleet may not be far behind." "How large a fleet?" Forlag asked, dread building in his chest. "Based on residual wormhole signatures, we estimate at least 30 capital ships, possibly more. Neither your forces nor my single vessel would be sufficient." Forlag considered this grim news. "What do you propose, Captain?" "I've already contacted our nearest outpost. Additional human vessels are en route, but they won't arrive for at least 12 hours. We need to prepare a coordinated defense." "You would stand with us against this threat?" Krell asked incredulously. "After our previous hostilities?" "The Void Reavers represent a greater threat to galactic stability than the Cathar Empire ever could," Rostova replied. "They don't conquer, they consume. Nothing is left in their wake. If they've evolved, as your scientist suggests, they could threaten all spacefaring civilizations." Forlag made his decision. "We will coordinate with you, Captain. The Cathar Empire may be proud, but we are not fools. Today's battle has demonstrated that clearly enough." Over the next hours, a tentative alliance formed. Cathar technicians worked with human specialists via secure channels to modify shield frequencies and weapon systems to better combat the Reaver threat. Tactical information was exchanged and a defensive perimeter established around the system. When a main Reaver fleet finally arrived, they faced a prepared and coordinated response. The Cathar vessels, arranged in their traditional crescent formation, engaged the front lines while the Vigilance executed rapid strikes against command nodes identified by Joint Intelligence. The battle raged for hours. Cathar vessels fell, their crews fighting to the last. The Vigilance sustained damage, but continued fighting with unyielding determination. Just as it seemed the defenders might be overwhelmed, new signatures appeared at the system's edge. Captain Rostova is hailing all vessels, the communications officer reported. Put her through, Forlag ordered. Reinforcements have arrived, Rostova announced, her voice steady despite the chaos of battle. All Cathar vessels, adjust your formations to heading mark 227. Create a corridor. Through this corridor emerged 5 vessels of human design, each similar to the Vigilance, but larger and bristling with weapon systems that immediately engaged the Reaver fleet. Their arrival changed the battle completely. Where the Void Reavers had adapted to the Cathar's tactics and even begun to counter some of the Vigilance's maneuvers, they had no response to this new force. Within an hour, the Reaver fleet was in full retreat, pursued by 3 of the human vessels to ensure they wouldn't return anytime soon. In the aftermath, as damage reports flooded in and casualty lists were compiled, Forlag received a request from Captain Rostova to come aboard the human command vessel, now identified as the Horizon. Despite the objections of his officers, he agreed. The interior of the Horizon defied his expectations. Where Cathar vessels were utilitarian and sparse, emphasizing function over comfort, the human ship balanced efficiency with habitability. Corridors were well-lit, crew quarters spacious, and even in the aftermath of battle, there was an order to everything that spoke of a different philosophy of space travel. In a conference room with a viewport overlooking the battered but victorious fleet, Forlag met with Rostova and several high-ranking human officers. The Supreme Command of the Cathar Empire has been fully briefed on today's events. Forlag began formally. They have authorized me to extend official gratitude for your assistance against the Void Reavers. And we accept that gratitude, Rostova replied with equal formality. However, the fundamental issue remains. Your empire's expansion threatens species under our protection. Forlag had anticipated this return to their original conflict. The Supreme Command has reconsidered certain aspects of our expansion strategy in light of recent developments. We propose a formal treaty establishing boundaries and recognition of mutual interests. The human officers exchanged glances, clearly surprised by this concession. That would be acceptable as a starting point, Dr. Reyes said, stepping forward. However, we would require verification protocols and regular diplomatic contact to ensure adherence. Agreed, Forlag said, though I must emphasize that while the Cathar Empire acknowledges your technological superiority, we remain a sovereign power with our own interests and security concerns. Of course, Rostova nodded. We have no desire to interfere in Cathar internal affairs. Our sole concern is the protection of developing species and the maintenance of galactic biodiversity. The discussions continued for hours, laying the groundwork for what would become the first formal treaty between the Cathar Empire and the Human Alliance. News of the encounter and subsequent alliance spread rapidly throughout Cathar space, causing political upheaval and intense debate. 3 months later, Forlag stood on the observation deck of the Convergence, a joint Cathar-human diplomatic vessel specially constructed to serve as neutral ground for ongoing negotiations. Beside him stood Captain Rostova, now officially designated as the Human Alliance's ambassador to the Cathar Empire. The Lemurian delegation arrives tomorrow, Rostova remarked, gazing out at the Xylos Nebula. They're eager to establish formal relations with both our civilizations, a concept that would have been unthinkable before our encounter, Forlag acknowledged. Many in the Empire still struggle with the idea of treating pre-FTL species as equals. Change comes slowly to any civilization, Rostova said. Humans spent centuries debating similar questions before establishing the Preservation Directive. Forlag turned to face her directly. There is still much your people haven't revealed. The location of your homeworlds, the full extent of your technology, your true numbers. The Supreme Command remains concerned about these unknowns. As they should be, Rostova replied candidly. Trust builds slowly, Commander. Humanity remained hidden for millennia for good reasons. Opening ourselves to the galactic community again represents a significant shift in our own policies, one not universally supported among our leadership. Then we find ourselves in similar positions, Forlag observed. Traditionalists in both our civilizations resist this new paradigm, while progressives embrace it perhaps too enthusiastically. And those of us in the middle must navigate between them, Rostov agreed, finding a balance that serves all our interests. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching as a Kthar patrol vessel and a human scout ship conducted joint exercises, a sight that would have been inconceivable months earlier. "Do you believe we can maintain this peace, Captain?" Forlag asked finally. "Our species are fundamentally different in so many ways." "Perhaps that's precisely why it can work," Rostova suggested. "We see the galaxy through different eyes. Where you perceive resources to be conquered, we see ecosystems to be preserved. Where you value strength and hierarchy, we value adaptation and cooperation. Combined, our perspectives may be stronger than either alone." "A philosophical position worthy of consideration," Forlag conceded. "Though I suspect the path forward will not be without conflict." "No worthwhile path ever is," Rostova smiled. "But the alternative, continuing as we were, would have eventually led to a confrontation neither of our civilizations could afford, especially with threats like the Void Reavers emerging." As they spoke, the Lemurian system's sun became visible through the nebula's gases, its light refracting into a spectrum of colors. Somewhere around that distant star, an aquatic species continued their peaceful development, unaware of how close they had come to conquest, or how their future had been irrevocably altered by the chance encounter between two vastly different powers. "A new era begins," Forlag said quietly, watching the light display. "For better or worse." "For better, I think," Rostova replied, "though only time will tell what we make of it." The Convergence continued its orbit at the edge of the nebula, a symbol of the fragile alliance between ancient humans and the expansionist Kthar, two civilizations learning to coexist in a galaxy far more complex and dangerous than either had fully understood before their fateful encounter.